Fantastic. Hello and welcome to our Rooted in Care workshop. My name is Dallas Rising and I use she and they pronouns. I am on the staff of Moose Jaw, I guess. Hello, as one of the uh, little but mighty team that we have, and I do programming and communications. I'm really excited to be here today with you to talk about mutual aid in congregations. And we have an intimate little group today, which is actually pretty awesome because that means I don't have to deal with breakout rooms. And neither do you. So we're going to be able to have everybody have all of the sharing and all of the learning today. I would love to hear where you're from, and if you can, let's see, where you're from, and if you have a congregation that you're part of. I would love to know that. You can put that in the chat if you want to, or if you're comfortable. I'm going to spotlight myself actually. If you're comfortable, you can unmute and say who you are and where you're from as well, because it's a tiny group and we have time. So
I'm Shelley Rowe. I'm from Rochester, Minnesota, and I'm the social justice coordinator at First UU Church here.
yay, I'm so glad you're here, and it's good to see you after emailing. So thank you. Nice. Hi, Shelley.
My name is Sherry Merriam, and my pronouns are she and her, and I live and work in Minneapolis, and I am a member at First Universalist Church in Minneapolis.
Thank you.
I'm Deb Liedel. I'm from Eden Prairie, and I don't belong to a congregation at this point, but I have been following the Unitarian Church and philosophy and Lake Fellowship out in Minnetonka. So I wanted to tune in and just be a part of this workshop.
Love that. So glad
Okay,
you're
and I'll
here.
be right
Thank
back.
you.
I'm gonna get my headphones.
Oh yeah, take care of yourself. It's fine.
And I'm Rebecca Donnelly. I use she, her pronouns, and I am in Minneapolis, and I also attend First Universalist.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to have so many friendly faces here this morning. Puts me at ease. So thank you very much. I would love to light our chalice. Oh, actually, before we're going to get into that part, I'll just tell you a little bit. So I'm Dallas. A little bit more about what you can expect from today. So it's going to be multimedia. Well, and I'll really appreciate your, thumbs up or my questions about, is the sound working and all of that kind of stuff. Because we can rehearse it as many times. And then when it actually happens, who knows? It's just a toss up about whether or not it's going to go through. We're going to have some different opportunities for like reflection and sharing. Sharing ideas and experiences. If you are a person who likes to reflect with pen and paper or, write things out, you're welcome to have those things nearby. If you're a person who, prefers to fidget or stare at the wall while you think about things, then that is just fine too. That part in the email was just for you. We wanted people to just have those things ready in case that was going to be helpful and you didn't have to worry about going searching for them. All right, let's do our chalice lighting if you have one. And if you don't have one, that's okay, because I've got it for all of us. This is my chalice that I'm using. And actually my chalice came from a neighbor from my Buy Nothing group. And I think Buy Nothing is a really great example of mutual aid. And I can talk a little bit more about that later on. But the chalice, it's actually like a jewelry stand thing, and it has little holes in it, as you can see, where earrings would fit through around the edges. But I love it so much because it came from someone in my neighborhood who passed it on to me. And I have a lot of different objects in my world that just have deeper meaning because they were a gift from someone. And this, thing that used to hold rings and earrings is now part of my, sacred spiritual grounding practice. So that's a really cool thing I wanted to point out. Okay, so Our chalice reading for today is reading number 448 from Singing the Living Tradition. The hymnal that is found in many UU churches and fellowships. So we gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life that we share together. Now, I don't have a fancy setup where the chalice can be seen for the whole time. I'm just going to set it off screen and you'll know that it's burning. I'll tend to it for us all. All right. So I am going to move to our my slides that I put together. And you'll be able to see them. Yeah, we're going to skip through this part. So I'm hoping, can I get an audible yes if you can see this? Because in my screen sharing, I can't.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
great. Okay, I'm glad. I can't see you anymore because I'm looking at my screen. So I just wanted to say a little bit more about the Minnesota Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Alliance, which is a mouthful, so we say Moose Jaw. Our website is at moosejaw.org. Just in case you didn't hear about this through the website or through our direct mail, sometimes emails get forwarded around and people get invited in more organic ways. But some of the things that we do at Moose Jaw is congregational support workshops like this. Also, it's absolutely great and just fine if you are not part of a congregation. The reason that we call them congregational support workshops is because we have a wide range of different kinds of congregations in the state of Minnesota, with, First Universalist, where Sherry and Rebecca and I go. We have 1,000 people in our church. And then there are some little fellowships that have like 30. And that's a huge difference. And so if there are churches and fellowships that are tiny, oftentimes they don't have a lot of resources to put on a lot of their own programming. And so Moose Jaw comes in and is able to help supplement some of that adult programming or some of that, some of the offerings, so that people who are in more rural spaces or more part of tiny organizations have an opportunity to access more. We do classes as well, so things that are ongoing, as opposed to a one-time workshop like this one. And I wanted to give a little shout out spotlight for our upcoming Trans Inclusion in Congregations class. That's going to be 6 sessions and it starts November 8th. So you can find more about that at Moose Jaw. We also have a Sharing the Pulpit class coming up with Reverend Leslie, who is also on our Moose Jaw team. And that's an opportunity for you to get to learn how to actually write a sermon and kind of get a chance to get some of those skills if that's something that you're interested in. We do regional issue forums, which are conversations that are kind of conversations about issues that are impacting us in this region of the Midwest or in Minnesota. We just did a forum about support for trans relocation. And we've got a combating hate forum coming up as well. So combating fascism and hate, and other things like that. We have spiritual centering for justice seekers once a month on Sunday nights. And that's a short Vespers type service where it's about a half an hour, maybe 40 minutes of opportunity to have an evening, very low key kind of spiritual centering and grounding and nourishing time online. And finally, we have conversations in community with justice leaders. So we talk with people we did Reverend Karen Von Fossen recently about her experience working out at on Line 3 issues. And we've got other people who are doing, deep work in some area of interest, and we'll talk to them, and we do talk to them about what they are up to and how people can get involved. So that is a little bit more about us. Again, moosejaw.org. All right, so on to the mutual aid part. So mutual aid is the radical act of caring for each other while working to change the world. And to me, that sounds a lot like church. Actually, when I read that definition, I thought like, oh, this sounds amazing. And also, this sounds a lot like some of the covenants that we have in different congregations. I understand that not every church has a covenant, but if you're unfamiliar with what a covenant is, if you're newer to Unitarian Universalism, a covenant is like a sacred promise that we strive to keep to one another, because we are not a creedal tradition and we don't have we don't have any like a Bible or some kind of a holy, person from on high delivering commandments. What we have are covenants, and these are promises that we create and keep with one another. Covenants are also aspirational. So they are about, striving to be the best that we can. And we understand that we can't always live up to these ideals, but it's a kind of North Star or a guiding star. So our covenant at First Universalist Church on the right, love is the spirit of this church and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So that helping one another and love being the spirit of that, that's a big deal. Another one, and I apologize, I did a bunch of Googling to try to figure out the Boston University group. I heard it, I didn't see it written out, and I heard it as Hums group. I don't know what a Hums group is. Maybe it's a Holmes group. None of my Googling yielded any answers to this mystery, but this was shared recently from our youth who went on a pilgrimage, 10th graders who went on a pilgrimage to Boston. And one of our youth shared this in our last Sunday service, and I thought it was good. We covenant to gather in celebration of our wholeness, to accompany each other in grief and joy, to nourish tenacity, and to speak the truth in love. This is how we worship here and always, for we have a stake in each other's flourishing. And so coming back to all of us, and that like having a stake in each other's flourishing, that seeking justice and helping one another, all of those kind of have echoes of mutual aid values in them. And I'm wondering if anybody here has a covenant in your church or fellowship that you would like to share, because it also has echoes of these values in it. And if you don't, that's okay, but this is an opportunity to share that. All right. That's okay. It's okay. So, okay. I'm coming back to our slides here. All righty. So said another way, mutual aid is collective coordination to meet each other's needs, usually from an awareness that the systems we have in place are not going to meet them. And I put a little color and humor off to the side. Broken system. So it's a picture of Buzz Lightyear and Woody from the Toy Story movies, and it's Buzz Lightyear is standing off to the side. Woody is standing there looking pretty disappointed, hopeless, overwhelmed, and Buzz is looking off into the distance with a smile, saying, broken systems everywhere." It's like, yeah, that is how it feels oftentimes in my world, as I look around and I just see like, oh my gosh, how are we supposed to survive, let alone thrive in these environments that are not built to serve individual people, that are not necessarily built to serve connection and community. So that's where that word tenacity from that covenant that I read is like, oh, tenacity, we need that. So what I would like to do now is take a moment to share a video. It's a mutual aid primer from Dean Spade, who is a thought leader on mutual aid issues. There's a great book that Dean wrote, It's tiny, it's little, it's bright. It has a ton of information in here. If you're curious about that and you need another book to add to your, thriving book collection, I recommend. But I'm going to share this primer. And if you've seen it already, I'm guarantee you will not mind seeing it again because it's really good. So give me just a moment. We'll get going on that. Oops. All right. So share screen. Boom. All right, now I can see you on the side. Can I get some thumbs up when I start it to know that the sound is coming through?
A lot of us are overwhelmed, pissed, and scared. I don't want to wait till the next election. I don't want to just write my congressperson and hope that they'll do the right thing. I don't want to just post things to the vacuum of social media. I don't want to just make statements about things. I want to change how things are. There are a zillion things we can do, and people are coming up with new ones all the time. This video is going to focus on mutual aid projects, what they are, and why we should be developing them right now. Mutual aid projects are a form of political participation in which people take responsibility for caring for one another and changing political conditions, not just through symbolic acts or putting pressure on their representatives in government, but by actually building new social relations that are more survivable. During recent flooding and storms, we saw mutual aid in action as people helped each other survive. Mutual aid isn't just for those big weather disasters, it is also for the daily, routine, life-threatening disasters of capitalism and white supremacy. People who are pissed about police and prisons are doing mutual aid work like creating prison letter writing projects, where people get connected to pen pals in prison to build relationships, help prepare for release, help prisoners have advocates on the outside, and help build a movement against policing in prisons that is informed and led by the people who know the very most about how the system actually works. Some people are creating jail support programs where people get together to make a schedule and agree to be outside their local jail on that schedule and greet anyone getting out and help them get what they need. Maybe a ride, clothes, a phone to call contacts, information about services or benefits. Some people are organizing community bail funds, revolving funds that can pay people's bail so that they are not locked up while they try to prepare for their defense. Money bail systems are one of the ways that poor people and people of color are given the worst chances in the criminal system. Court support projects are where people coordinate to accompany someone facing charges to their court dates, ideally by packing the court with supporters each time, so that no one has to go alone, and sometimes to influence lawyers, judges, and jury by showing their support for the criminalized person. Some people are coordinating ride systems to help families visit prisoners who are being held in facilities far from home. In Oakland, the Oakland Power Projects are about strengthening people's skills to respond to community emergencies in ways that minimize police contact. When you call 911 for a health emergency, the cops come too, and that often leads to violence. The Oakland Power Projects is about training the community to respond to health emergencies, including mental health crises, chronic health problems, and acute health emergencies, so that people don't have to call 911. People who are scared about the emboldenment of ICE and Border Patrol and increasing deportations are doing things like forming rapid response networks where people warn each other about immigration raids and help each other hide, and helping immigrants do safety planning in case they get detained so that someone is ready to take care of their kids and elders. Some rapid response projects are even working on training people to show up and physically stop ICE from taking someone away. Imagine if we built that kind of power to stop arrests through rapid mobilization of a lot of people to outnumber cops. No More Deaths, an organization in Arizona, works to save the lives of people crossing the border by putting food, water, and supplies in the harsh desert areas where people who are crossing often die from the conditions. There are so many mutual aid project possibilities because there are so many intense ways people aren't having their needs met in the brutal systems we live under. Like food projects like Food Not Bombs, projects where people organize temporary housing for people coming out of prison or foster care by opening their homes to each other, childcare collectives where people watch each other's kids so they can go to political meetings, court, or jobs, projects where people accompany vulnerable people like trans people or people with disabilities to medical appointments or public benefits offices and hearings, projects where people make sure neighbors being pushed out by gentrification have good access to information about their housing rights and accompany each other to housing court, help people read documents and defend themselves from eviction, projects where people protest landlords who are refusing to make repairs or give back security deposits by directly protesting at those landlords' houses and businesses. The messages of this work are: the government is, we can't rely on it. You are not alone. The system is the problem, not the person being targeted by it. And we're going to take matters into our own hands and help each other survive right now, rather than expecting help from the same systems that have a clear history of causing harm. Mutual aid projects don't just help with the current disasters, they help us prepare for the ongoing disasters that are emerging because of climate chaos and crumbling infrastructure. When we build cooperative projects, practice making decisions together, share things, meet more people in our communities, and learn about each other's skills and needs, and learn how current systems work and how they are not working, we're better prepared for the next storm, the next blackout, and the next budget cuts. Something really important about all this is that mutual aid is not charity. Charity is where rich people and institutions give tiny crumbs to poor people to make themselves look better. Usually there are a lot of strings attached to what they give, like giving only to mothers, or only to children, only to sober people, or only to people of faith. Charity rides on the idea that rich people or social workers should decide who is the deserving poor and who is the undeserving poor, and that rich people can put conditions on the housing or food or cash they give poor people. Charity blames poor people for poverty. Mutual aid blames the system for making people poor and says everyone deserves everything they need. Charity affirms the existing distribution of wealth and life chances. Mutual aid challenges it. Charity is top-down, mutual aid is horizontal. Charity is about control, hierarchy, and isolation. Mutual aid is about solidarity, liberation, and participation. People are scared and angry right now and trying to find ways to fight back and support each other. Building mutual aid projects is a way to plug people in, build shared understandings of current conditions, offer meaningful support to vulnerable people, and prepare for the coming disasters. Mutual aid work is not easy. It means forming lasting commitments to doing hard work, collaborating with people even when we have conflict, and facing the heart-wrenching realities of the systems we live under. It is also deeply satisfying work that transforms us from being exasperated, passive observers of the shitstorm we're living in to inspired builders of the new world we desperately crave and need. Stop believing in authority and start believing in each other. We're all we've got. We're all we need.
Okay. So had anybody seen that video before? No, it was new to some folks. Yes, Rebecca. New to some folks. I'd love some reflection on what you think. What did you learn, or what questions do you have? What did that spark in you?
This is Shelley. I loved that last line, that we're all we have, we're all we need. I would love the link to this. if
Oh yeah, I'm happy to
possible.
share that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And may I ask, I mean, it's okay if you, so what was it about that line, just to go a little bit deeper, what was it about that line that struck you?
I think a lot of times, at least in my experience, that there is a feeling of not being enough, not having enough, and looking outward to find the resilience we already have.
Mm.
And I really liked that it was reinforced, the message was reinforced through this.
Yeah. And it's a we, not an I, not a you. It's a we, which is critical. Yeah.
I liked their illustration of charity versus mutual aid, in that, there's so many companies now, even if you go to the coffee shop and they're like, do you want to donate to blah blah blah? And I'm like, you're a rich company. Why would I donate when you can be donating? But still, what the video is saying is that charity can be very, very deceptive. And I very much agree with that. I think it's more like let us look good, but we're not really doing the everyday person a service. And so I really like the idea of mutual aid, which is grassroots up. And but one comment I did think of when they talked about don't trust authority, which I can see both sides of, and absolutely you should be critical thinkers, absolutely. But I also think what came to mind is when it comes to what we can do about that as voters, we can elect delegates of integrity. We can change. We have the power to change the feel of the government and really look carefully and explore carefully who we are electing into government, which then brings us back to the fact that that's a big bureaucracy, and there's just layers and layers of things that people have to wade through to actually, have it be effective.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, as a person who does a lot, I I was very active in UU the Vote last year, and definitely, I'm volunteering for my local city, city council person campaign, like there, I'm, I think that it is important to recognize that we do live in this system, right? Like we do have certain people who are representatives or politicians, like they are in a position of power, and we need to not just throw up our hands, like,
Right.
yeah, those systems are pretty messed up in a lot of ways, and there are definitely people on the far right who have been working for decades to get us into a place where, we're looking at all kind, there are people flooding Minnesota, not flooding Minnesota, but there are people who are, that's not what I want to say. There are people who are fleeing to our state because, their right to the health care that they need
Mhm.
has been legislated away, whether that is abortion access or gender affirming health care. There's just so much that we have to live under, and mutual aid is a way of trying to survive within these systems, right? So yeah, and Moose Jaw will continue to support UU the Vote and other kinds of things too. So yeah, but I think that that's really true. Did anybody else have some feelings about the charity versus mutual aid model? Like a lot of us were raised to really value charity, and especially in a spiritual context. Like charity is a Christian value, isn't it? I mean, I wasn't raised Christian, but maybe somebody else here was and knows a little bit more. Anybody
This
have
is
feelings?
Shelby again. If I may, I am a disabled person, and the charity model of disability is something that we argue against a lot. So this is fantastic. And what kept coming up for me was how often people with disabilities don't feel strong enough or have something come up and they can't do what they want to do. So it kind of feels hopeless. And the idea of mutual aid was refreshing.
Hi, folks. I'm
Hi.
Jay, and I'm just visiting. I was invited by Shelley, who is also in my congregation, and our new social justice coordinator. We're so happy. But I'm feel so lucky that I'm here today. Dallas, fantastic meeting so far with wonderful explanations, and this film is so impactful. I'm thrilled that you allowed us the link. I'm meeting with a young lady who's coordinating the Isaiah collective here in the Rochester area, and I want to share this with her this afternoon. What I felt, it was both explained things and made me want to be a part of this energy that I feel. So I'm very glad to be here. And I'm also newly disabled. I had a stroke and I'm recovering now. Thank you. I just wanted to pop in and give you my reaction to the film.
Yay, thank you. I'm really glad you're here, Jay.
Response that I had is that I loved, it caught me very early on, when it said something about like, so often we feel helpless in the face of all of these issues. And and some of the modeling that we see is like, well, just shout your frustration into the void, or, oh my gosh, did I resonate with that? And that's something that I don't do, but I see everybody else around me doing. And because, but who knows what to do? And I have felt like so lost and not tapped into, well, I myself cannot individually create a grassroots campaign. I do not know how, nor do I have the energy. And so it really provides a lot of hope of like, okay, well, here are opportunities to actually do something with your voice and your energy, especially for those of us who, are disabled, have chronic pain or whatever, who feel like, showing up at protests or this sort of thing is like, we all feel like the guilt, I shouldn't speak for all of us. Many of us feel like that white person guilt of, I should be at the protests. But A, that's not an option for many of us. And two, how does that help these other issues? And so getting the offered opportunity of like, yes, but here is a way to participate productively with your energy and contribute is really encouraging. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm really happy that this has made a good impact and that you received it so, enthusiastically. Mary, Kathy, did you want to share anything? It's okay if you want to
Yes.
pass.
I would like to. I apologize for being a few minutes late. So perhaps during that 10 minutes, you described and gave a little history about mutual aid. But this is my first time hearing that title for this grassroots movement. And I think as an introduction for me, that video was perfect. It really gave me a very broad view of what they're talking about. And if you could give a little history of mutual aid, but if you've already done it, I'll figure out another way.
We're headed there next. So you're
okay.
Perfect segue. Absolutely perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So no, I haven't given any history yet, but I wanted to, but we're getting there. But first, before I go to my slides and photos, which I have, and we'll get to them, I'm wondering if anybody can give examples of mutual aid from history that you can think of already. Because there are several. We've been living under broken, oppressive systems for, as long as we've had civilization, right? Like it's pretty much the way of it. So, let's think about that. What are some examples that you can think of? Let's spark in.
A very personal example that I can give is during the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, when there was the chaos and the crisis. I wasn't living in Minneapolis yet, but many of my friends were. And I know that block by block, people were coming together to protect each other, to stay up all night and watch everybody else's houses for emergencies or crises. And the way I participated is I'm a licensed therapist, and there were calls for therapists to step in and provide psychological first aid to people affected by all of the chaos. And so I was able to do that once or twice. And I know there were immense cleanup efforts and just so many ways in which I saw the city coming together and helping each other out in ways that were very organized and in ways that were just people showing up and picking up garbage or whatever. And that was enormous. And it's part of the reason that I wanted to buy a home in Minneapolis. Part of the reason that I moved here.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I think this might fit the model, but when I think about the Red Cross, or excuse me, not the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, or the well, I know the model of Goodwill has changed over the last few years, but those are community-based organizations that provide a service for those in need of clothing, the food shelves for families in need. We have within my suburban city, we have a local organization that is a local food shelf that is started by people in the community and has been in place for about 20 years. It's also a place where folks in need can go for clothing and housing items that fit the criteria of meeting that need. So therefore, people can donate and people can purchase, and it's kind of going around in a cycle.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up, because there are some places that it's like there are sometimes it can be confusing about what is what exactly, and maybe there's a spectrum in there. I know, just because you mentioned Salvation Army, I want to bring that up specifically. Salvation Army, it's huge. They have a lot going on. And this is a good example of like working within the systems that we what we have sometimes. Salvation Army is known for being very, very Christian, faith-based kind of like I personally teach yoga I'm a yoga teacher, and I teach with an organization called Karuna Community Minnesota, and we go into places, we go into jails and prisons and like recovery or reintegration centers. And when we go to the Salvation Army, we can't call it yoga because yoga is too sacrilegious. That like they only have faith-based, like Christian AA, all of that. And so we have to call it mindful movement and be really careful. And so I think Salvation Army, for their programming, like there is restriction about who can access, like you have to be under certain conditions. The other thing too is, and I wouldn't discourage anybody from, giving your furniture and clothing and whatnot to a place where somebody else can get them. That's absolutely fine. However, if there's a purchase model, then it's not a gift or like freely accessed. We still have some kind of a barrier, right, as to who can access those items, versus like a clothing pantry where anybody can walk in and take whatever it is that they need. Yeah, I think, and I also think too about like the distance, if there's a middle person in between, right? So if there's a middle person, like I have to give. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes, as in churches, like we have ministerial funds that churches run, right? Where I will give in the pew, my $5 or $10, and then I know that that's going into a fund so that if a person can't meet their rent and they go to the church and say, I need help, or, I have medical copays, or I can't get groceries, like the church can then give that to them. Sometimes there are mutual aid funds where you're not actually giving directly to the person in need, but there's, like the bail fund that they talked about in the video. But the idea is about like how many barriers are there to accessing those things, could be a way of thinking about it. So, and we're going to get more into that, but it can be confusing sometimes. A food pantry, a food shelf. So sometimes food shelves, you have to prove that you are below a certain income level, or you have to prove, that you're a citizen, or so you have documentation. Other food pantries, you don't. I'm going to share a link, and I hope you will, get too in the weeds about this. But when Sherry was mentioning during the uprising after George Floyd was murdered by police, my personal way of participating was I did go into that highly organized space. And I saw that there was a lot of activity happening and started recruiting people to get together so that we could track what all these different places were and what it was that they offered. One of the things that, one example is like when people were bringing food, we had all this food sitting on boulevards and there was no refrigeration because people didn't know what to bring. And, people bringing tons of Kraft macaroni and cheese when a lot of communities don't eat that culturally or have lactose intolerance or whatever the thing is. But so part of it is like, we wanted to help meet needs that were there. Like if you say diapers, that's not the same thing as saying we need diapers in size 2. That's different. So mutual aid is diapers size 2. Charity is here's about, here's like 20 boxes of Kraft mac and cheese. And that's the difference. But if you can kind of conceptualize it that way, like mutual aid is meeting a stated need. That's like, yep, this is what we need. That rather than, oh, I want to feel good about not throwing away my old pilly stained sweaters. So I'm going to drop them over here because that makes me feel better about not having wasted something, is how I think about it in my mind. So yeah, this is for TC Map is Twin Cities Mutual Aid Project. And I could talk about, I have talked about that a ton, but yes. Did you, yeah, Sherry?
Yeah, sorry, Dallas. Can I jump in with a thought? This
Yes.
makes me think of a term that my husband, who's disabled, and I have heard and used in certain sections of the disabled community. There's helpful and there's helpy. And helpy is when people think they're being helpful, but they're not. Like, here, let me walk you across the street, blind person. But I don't actually need that help, but they feel the need to be helpful, so they're trying to be helpful, but they're not, so it's helpy. And so that's a term that I think is working its way around the disabled community, and it feels like it applies here. There's like charity, which is people who want to feel good about helping more than they actually want to be helpful. And I feel like that's
or they really do want to be helpful, but they just don't know how. They just don't know how. And, so there's, and that's, I think, it's again, a spectrum, right? Like, so there's certainly performative helping, performative helpiness. And then there's also like, I really do want to, but I just didn't know. And once I do know, I can do it. Yes, Rebecca.
Thank you. I always forget how to use the hand.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
I have to, okay. But I just wanted to share one thing that came up for me just in that piece and also in the video was just the key, for me, is really about relationship. Where is the relationship? Because when we aren't in relationship with a person or with a community, a lot of times that can lead to the helpiness, like you were talking about, Sherry, is that we aren't in relationship, so we don't have a good understanding of what the need is. But we do, we long for that relationship, but we don't know how to get it. And I think that that's a big part of that. The piece for me is why I love mutual aid, is that it really does reground and kind of take steps back to remind us that we need to be in relationship to be able to, provide connection and service and just be in community, like that relationship is such a key thing. And so that for me is a really big thing. And when I'm thinking about movements, my background is in working in the anti-violence movement, working with folks that are escaping or trying to leave an abusive situation or trying to live within an abusive situation. And a lot of times that mutual aid is a really key thing because folks need to be in relationship to kind of know how to provide support in a way that isn't also going to create this, allow that situation to become more dangerous, and it can be very precarious. And so, and sometimes we see situations that start out as mutual aid, then move into more of a commodified type of charitable type of model. And so that's where it can also get really tricky, because then that relationship then kind of gets strained and removed again.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
Anyway.
in an effort to scale it or professionalize it or make it seem a little bit more enticing to a more mainstream audience sometimes. Thank you so much for all of this. I'm going to bring up just a little bit more about, like, we can go into that difference between charity versus mutual aid piece. So a couple different, so charity members are donors versus mutual aid where members are decision makers. There's that level of, power differential here. Charity day-to-day work is done by professionals, whereas mutual aid day-to-day work is done by volunteers. I have certainly been in, I think that there are certain situations where we do need people who are able. One of the difficulties is that oftentimes if we have somebody who is able to do a ton of volunteer work, they have more privilege and more security than people who are already struggling a ton. But this is a difference you might be able to spot. A charity funded by charitable donations and grants versus members pooling their resources, like direct to direct giving. Charity, that was requirements to receive aid versus mutual aid where there's no requirements. You just say, I have a need, and you are valid. Charity assumes what people need, the helpy, versus asking what people need. That's helpful to ask. Charity can stigmatize those in need, and mutual aid, you're part of the community in need. There's that identity piece, belonging piece, that relationship piece that I think Rebecca was talking about. Charity is accountable to wealthy donors and foundations, that idea about the breadcrumbs. Mutual aid is accountable to the community, and charity treats the symptoms, not the cause of injustices. Mutual aid addresses the cause of injustices. This is one of those things where sometimes, like, we do need to survive, but mutual aid never just sort of ignores that this is part of a bigger issue. There's always that whether it's a reminder to I think of it this way, whether it's just like a reminder, a cultural piece that's like, it's okay, it's not your fault. If you are struggling in this situation, it's that you're in a broken system. It's not that you're inadequate. And that making sure that we are always prioritizing and protecting the person who is being harmed by the broken system, rather than like saying that there's something wrong with you because you can't make it in this system. That's helpful. So here are some examples. We talked a little bit about some examples, but we've got street medics, so showing up during protests to help people. So Sherry was talking about being a person who could provide some like mental health help available, and this is like physical health and wound support and that sort of thing. If there's a protest, aware of that. We've got the ride shares during the Montgomery bus boycott. That was one way that people were able to pool resources and support one another for a time where they were addressing systemic oppression and inequality, and then also helping one another get where you need to go. This one was mentioned in the video about people who put out water and other supplies in the desert for migrants who are working their way, fleeing dangerous, violent situations in their home country to come to the United States, and just trying to help people survive in the desert. Venmo and Cash App and whatnot, that's a part of my daily existence where people can just make direct requests and you can easily electronically send funds directly to a person. I have used Venmo. I have a friend who worked in sexual assault survivor support, and there was an example where it was toward the end of the year and she couldn't access, a lot of the funds were drained before they were going to get replenished and for the new year. And this person had been assaulted and needed an abortion and lived far away. And my friend contacted me because she knows that I have done a lot of abortion support work. And she was like, I need money to get this person down to the cities. We need a hotel. We need funds. And I was just like, great. And I put a call out on Facebook to my network and just said, send me money. put this in the tag, and we had that funded within, I think it was like 5 hours. It was not a problem. And so even though, I think to Rebecca's point, even if you don't have a direct relationship, it was relationships that got that taken care of, right? We're not able to always meet one another's needs within our own circle, but for my friend who's doing that work to know that she could contact me and that I'm a person who is really well connected and has no problem asking for things. I have no problem asking for money. And people can send money in, and then I can let folks know like it's taken care of and it's supported and we did it. Like that's a form of mutual aid. So I'm taking a look at our time. Want to make sure that we get enough space. Okay, great. So I'm curious about if you can think about some reasons that have prevented you from taking action for social justice in the past. This is our opportunity to do a little bit of reflection, either writing out in your your pen and paper, or just thinking about it. We're going to have a few minutes to think, so you don't need to feel pressure. But thinking about what are some reasons that you haven't participated in the past. Looking at things that get in the way. And you don't have to think about these in terms of like, how could a mutual aid project fix it? That's not the point of this. Just listing out all the ways that you might have been stopped. What prevented you? Does that make sense? Do I need to frame that a different way? Can I get thumbs up if it makes sense? Yes, great. Okay, perfect. I'll give us a little music while we do that. Let's take about 30 more seconds. Okay, was that enough time for folks to get an assortment of things? Okay. So what do you think? What are some things that have gotten in the way?
I have been struggling with my level of understanding and patience within myself when I have made efforts to contact individuals who are part of what we've created in our racial justice team. We call the whole thing the liaison program, and the whole idea is to develop relationship. So it starts with NAACP, goes to an indigenous group, a homeless group, quite a large variety of people of color in our area here in Duluth. And it looks great on paper, but when I make phone calls, physical visits, emails, and texts to the people with whom I am attempting to make relationships, they don't get back with me. And my peers on the co-chair team, they keep reminding me, Kathy, that's white supremacy talking. You are using your white supremacy focus and values to expect them to get back with you. But I don't know how else to work with them. I can't just show up at events without an invitation, because I do show up at events when I'm invited. And our basic principle is show up and shut up. We don't do any directing. We are just there with hope in our heart to develop relationship. And for part of it, it's been working beautifully. But there's that other part that the relationship seems to be at a standstill because of communication. So I would love to hear from you all about that, either today or at some time.
Mm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. I guess I can open that up to the group. I mean, actually, at this point, let's not problem solve. Let's not problem solve. Let's leave that. But thank you for sharing. So, like, kind of communication, uncertainty, wanting to do it, the right way. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you. What are some other things that have stopped?
This is
I'm
Shelley.
sorry. I'm sorry. Katie at Moose Jaw was like, say prevented, not stopped you. I don't know. I don't know. I don't mean to, I think about like that stopped me in my brain. But what's prevent? I don't know if there's a difference, like how it lands with you, but I'm just gonna say like that's why I keep going back and forth. Okay.
Well, what has stopped me is judgment from family, the voice in the back of my head telling me that I need to be a good girl, my Christian upbringing. And then I put my voice, internalized ableism. So I lack confidence and shut down, and then just not knowing where to start.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can resonate with what Kathy and Shelley have said, and the way that it all kind of like it's one like simmering, boiling pot of like uncertainty and doubt, and I don't know how to enter into this, and I've been criticized by family for like not being safe enough, and except anyway, and just fear of doing the wrong thing or making the situation worse or sticking my foot in my mouth, which and then just not knowing. And then there's and then a personal lack of resources. Do I have the time, the money, the energy for this, and fear of making a commitment that I can't follow through with, which Dallas knows is a constant issue in my life. And so not wanting to, which again, leads into like not wanting to make the situation worse, not wanting to commit to something that I can't keep up with. So yeah, it's a big messy mess in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that shows up. Anyone else want to share? All right, I will give you some reasons that I thought of when I was putting this together. And I did hear some of them say it, but fear of going alone. Like, how do I get, how do I get started? I don't want to show up and, I don't know anybody. What's my relationship to this? I don't have one yet. So how do you develop that? No transportation. Can't get there. It wasn't accessible. So there was something about the venue, or that could be either physically accessible or it wasn't accessible because there was a culture situation that I couldn't understand, or like I felt really out of place, or it wasn't accessible for a new person. It felt like it was a space where only really seasoned people who already knew what they were doing and already had relationship were there. No childcare, or the situation wasn't child friendly. I don't have children, by the way, but this is a situation that that has come up, and something that I think about as an ally to folks who do have children. No money or resources. Like, I'm trying to sort out, I don't have anything to give because I'm in a space where I need more support. I can't do it all, and I have to prioritize. I've got to feed my body. I have to rest my body. I have to move my body. I have to clean my body. Like, there are all these things that just go into living. There's errands to run. I have family commitments. There's deadlines at work. Like, how am I supposed to do more when I already feel like I can't do all the things that I'm supposed to figure out how to do? I didn't hear about it until it was over. There wasn't enough notice given. There was like, hey, this thing is happening like today. And like, oh, well, if I had known about that sooner, I might have been able to get there, but couldn't. I didn't know if I would be welcome. I didn't know if it would be a place for me. I don't want to show up in a place where I could be doing harm just by being there, or where I'm not invited. I figure somebody else is going to do it. I'm not really needed. Fear of negative repercussions. I can't get arrested right now. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to make it worse. Burnout. I've been doing this for so long and I just don't have it in me anymore. I feel like a husk and just need time to recover and repair. And, there's no feeling like that's not necessarily a legitimate space to be in. And so I'll just avoid it, or feel guilty because I can't keep going. That's also a broken system, right? That creates burnout. So concern that this might just make me feel even worse. If I go and I learn more about all the ways that things are broken and wrong, then I'm going to get more depressed. And I'm already feeling totally overwhelmed and in despair about the state of things. And then also concern about not doing enough. I can't do as much as I feel like I should be able to do, or I can't do as much as I want to do. So since I can't do as much as I think I should, or I actually want to, I'm not going to engage. So those are some examples, right? Like, I think we could go on if we started to really dig into it, but there's a lot of things that can get in the way, and that's normal. And I just want to say that that's really normal and it's okay. And like, all of us have various concerns and things because we're all living in these systems that are hard to live in. They're just hard to live in. And I'm just going to check in with my slides here. Okay, actually it's time for a little bit of a story. So for the rest of the time, we've got 20 minutes left. I know that a lot of what we've talked about are things, these mutual aid projects, they're sort of like big, like it's creating a big project where, we're making a food pantry, or we are staying outside of a jail, or, we're creating like um phone trees for childcare, like, all of these kinds of things. A lot of those examples in the video were very big examples, and I just want to say that mutual aid doesn't always have to be really big. And I think that starting in relationship, like within our congregations, or just within our networks that already exist, that can make a difference. So for example, my Buy Nothing group, does everybody know what Buy Nothing is? Should I give a little? Okay, let me explain what Buy Nothing is. It's my absolute delight to share this magic with you. So the Buy Nothing project is the Buy Nothing project is a project that was put together by a couple of neighbors who wanted to reduce waste and also build relationships and connection with their immediate neighbors. So like their geographical neighbors. And I think it started on Facebook. They created a Facebook group, and essentially the rules are, when you join a Buy Nothing group, you join up with your people who live around you, and you can make 3 kinds of posts in this group. One of them is an ask. So this is what I'm asking for. Like, I am asking for, what is an example of something? For canning jars. I'm canning and I could use some more canning jars. Or another one that I saw is like, does anybody, Halloween costumes. This was a big one in my group recently. So does anybody have Halloween costumes? I'm trying to create a true example. I'm trying to create, my 5-year-old wants to be a Balrog. If you've ever seen Lord of the Rings, that big like shadow and flame monster guy. So this person was like, I don't have any ideas on how to do this. If you've got stuff that could help me make that happen, come my way. Asks can also be for, we had a mom a single mom whose 2 little girls were sick for Halloween. And she said, we can't go out for Halloween. Would anybody be willing to bring by some little treat goodie bags or little like toys for my kids? And neighbors were thrilled to be able to do this. Like maybe, you are like, oh my gosh, absolutely. This sounds amazing. I could go on and on. So a lot of asks. It could be like time. Can somebody jump my car right now? It could be skills, any kind of thing like that. The other type of post is a gift. I have a gift to give. So most often these gifts are a physical thing. Here I have, here's a book, here's a sweater, here's a chair or a desk or whatever the thing is. And you take a picture of it and you put it up and you give, accurate information about its condition. And then somebody can say, yeah, I would love that. That sounds perfect. My 10-year-old is really into face masks right now. I will take those, or whatever that is. When the Balrog question was posed, I said, hey, I've been saving this red and orange netting from my oranges bags. And maybe you could use that to create, some weird like flame stuff. And so I've been saving these netting things from those produce bags, which aren't recyclable. And she was like, yes. And so I was able to offer, to give that. And that was really cool. The other post is gratitude, which is also very important. And so being able to say, we have a Thankful Thursday post. And so today I was able to share, I was grateful for a neighbor who gave me some books, and we were texting back and forth about these books. And so she's like, creating a little bit of meaning for my nighttime reading as I'm looking at these books. I was recently ordained as a chaplain, and I'm exploring different, kind of spiritual tradition stuff. And so that's all really great. And we get a chance to build community because you get to go to one another's homes and you read about things and you get to know who's into what. And now I know who the cat lady is in my place. And I know who the guy is that makes his own kombucha. And I know, and I've got like a ceramicist in my neighborhood who can take all of my like bubble wrap and packing paper and stuff and use it to ship her stuff. And it's fantastic. And we have this whole network throughout our, I know who the ones who are caterers, and I can always go to them if I need extra basil because they have a ton in their yard. Like, and I can go through my neighborhood and just like know who's there. And it's fantastic. So Buy Nothing, you can look up Buy Nothing Project if you're curious about it. In Minneapolis, where it's very densely populated, we have it by neighborhood, so it's hyper local. And some other places, my sister is in Northfield, it's like the whole city. I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, the big projects. It doesn't always have to be a big, huge project, right? So like when Dean Spade in the video was talking about, mutual aid projects, it's going to be hard work and you're going to have to work through, like, we have drama in our Buy Nothing group sometimes. Sometimes somebody will post something that is like, oh, that is a racist doll from the 40s. And this is not a place maybe to post that without any context. Like, we have conversations about that. And sometimes people get upset because they think an ask is too big. We had a person ask for an engagement ring and somebody was really offended by that. But it's like, no ask is too big and no gift is too small. So that's a cultural value that we have. And I think that when we're talking about brainstorming about mutual aid projects or ways that we can support one another, it doesn't always have to be a big, elaborate thing. It could be very simple. So when I joined the church, I'm going to risk sounding a little snarky, and it's not my intention to sound snarky here. When I joined the church, I was actually really surprised. So I joined after George Floyd was murdered. I grew up I started going to UU church when I was in 7th grade, and then I participated until I was 18, very intensely in all the youth program stuff. But it was a hard transition for me to make from being so involved, like on a regional and national level in youth leadership, to go to being an anonymous person in a pew that gets talked to and stands to sing every once in a while. That wasn't really working for me. So I left and stopped going to church and did a lot of activism. And then 20 years later, I came back. And part of why I came back is because we were in a pandemic and I live 1 block away from where George Floyd was murdered, and our whole lives were turned upside down. And I needed somebody who was like wise and had spent time thinking about how to be or frame crises like this. And so I started going back to church. But when I went to church, my only reference really for how church worked as a grown-up was my sister. And my sister is Mormon. She's part of the Latter-day Saints Church and Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And in her church, there is a high degree of expectation around participation and what I would call mutual aid in her church. It's very involved. Like, when you are there, you have an expectation that you are building relationships. You are going over to somebody's home for dinner and having talks about the Bible. Once a month, somebody is coming to your home. It's different. So you have different relationships. There are, she's been in roles where, her job was, if somebody is having a baby, to create meal trains for that person. She's had another role in her church where she was, if somebody didn't have a job, she helped them find a job. It's like, there's a bunch of different roles and you get assigned, granted, it's different than in UU spaces, but essentially, like, you get a calling or an assignment, and then that's your job in the church. And that it's not really super optional. UUs are not going to assign people things. That would not fly in our space. However, I was really surprised when I got to church and I was like, wait, people aren't doing that here. People, like, a Mormon is never going to have to call movers ever. They are going to have people show up to help them move. That's just not, if no elder in the Mormon, I guess not elders are missionaries, but no senior, person is ever going to have to rake their own yard. The young men will come and do that. They'll send the 16-year-old boys over and they will be raking lawns. And so I was just kind of surprised that there wasn't a structure in place in my big, huge church of 1,000 members to figure out how to do this. And then I went to, I have a yard, I'm a homeowner, and I went to, one of these environmental fairs, and there's all these pieces of, handouts, like, make a rain garden. Here's information about how you make a rain garden. And it's like, oh, I'd love to have a rain garden and I have the property, but I'm not going to make a rain garden by myself. Where are the people who are going to come and do the rain garden with me? If we all agree this is a good idea and we need more rain gardens, why aren't we making rain gardens together? And so that's part of, why I wanted to talk about mutual aid and congregations is like, let's create cultures where this is a thing that is part of how we get to know one another and how we support one another and how we change the world. And so I know I've been talking for a very long time. I didn't mean to get off on a huge long tangent like that, but for our brainstorming portion, which is now, I'd love for you to take a few moments and think about what are the different ways that either in your church community or in, another community that you're a part of, might you be able to shift in the direction of a mutual aid value system, even if it's not a formal project, right? We don't have to have the idea of a whole formal project, but what might that look like? I'll put the music back on. Does that make sense? Are there questions? I've been just talking and talking. It makes sense. Okay, go dream. I'll give you a couple minutes and then we'll come back to share. Right, let's start to wrap those ideas up. And I'm sure we'll be sparked and inspired by one another's ideas as well. You don't have to have them all. So, right. Was that an okay amount of time to get going? Okay, perfect. So, what'd you think about?
Okay, well, this is Sherry, and it's sort of overwhelming because the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
But the first few things I came up with, well, I mean, first, like summer, fall produce, just like all those cucumbers, like just bring them and then somebody else takes them home.
Mhm.
Clothing swap, like I love a good swap. of anything, especially clothes, because I never have the right size clothes. And then the leftovers get, go to some other like closet, community closet thing. You mentioned like help around the home, garden, moving. Like I hate moving, so it's so expensive. So like stuff like that, love it. Mowing, like all that kind of stuff. You mentioned the childcare collective idea for neighborhoods. Like we have a perfect space. All the parents could take turns covering Friday night date night. And then every parent gets a Friday night date night on a regular basis while the other parents cover. I'm not even a parent, and I think that everybody needs this. Like I would cover so that all the other parents would get a Friday night date night, and then I would get one too, just because I'm on the rotation. And that's just what I got so far. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
I love it, Sherry. I was also thinking along the same lines, a treasure swap. So in our congregation, we often talk about what you can give, and we have a caring congregation that offers rides, or they make a meal, or things that I can't do with one hand from a wheelchair, no car. So I can't offer services that this whole committee is dedicated to. So I like the idea of a treasure swap, because I do a lot of online graphic work, and so something like that.
I thought of some examples, so help me out if I hope they fit the model, but I also thought of rides for those in need. And I know in my community, we have a huge Somali population, and I have taught English as a second language to adult language learners and as a volunteer. So I do know that there's a need for those that are refugees here settling in to be able to get to places and appointments and things like that. Also, we have at least one refuge for teens in need here in our community that have been kicked out of their home or need shelter. And I thought, well, even going in there and doing some cooking with them, showing them how to cook, but leaving them with some good home cooked food is maybe something of value. And then also, I am a retired teacher, and I get together consistently with a group of retired teachers in my district. And we have, I happen to think that it's potentially a place where I could ask for donations of money to give to then an organization within our high school called Family Friends, run by one of the run by one of the guidance counselors. But it goes directly to the money goes directly to kids in need or families in need. And again, I know that's a little restrictive with what I'm understanding as the definition of mutual aid, but I do know, having worked for many years in a district, that there are families and kids that struggle and have significant needs, and this goes directly to those families, and there is relationship built out of this.
I wonder if another option for that could be if you have a relationship with the person or persons who serve those families,
Oh,
for you to
absolutely.
say like, hey, I'm interested in supporting, and
Right.
I'd like it if you just kept me on your on call. If there's something that you need, like, if there's something like a family has moved and they don't have any winter clothes and you need
Right.
that, like,
Yep.
tell me the sizes, tell me, or sometimes we have this a lot in our area. We've got people who are supporting refugee families, and then they'll say, we need bunk beds, a dining room table, we need, all these,
Mhm.
and then they just send that out and different people can say like, I have this, I have that.
Mhm.
And it's also okay to say like, no, that's not good enough condition because we don't want to just hand off
Right,
our,
right, right.
crappy stuff
Right.
to somebody. But that could be a way of like building a little bit more relationship and having it be a little bit more personalized too.
Yeah, for sure.
As
I
just a
understand.
possibility. Mhm.
Yep.
And expedite things too, right? So that
Right.
it feels like, oh, this is exactly what this is going to, and there's another person on the end who's,
Yeah, there's a way
you
to
know,
do that.
a
Yep.
size 10 in snow pants. That's what we need. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good, good. All right. How about asking for what you need? So Sherry, you kind of had a couple ideas around swaps and things. But a lot of this is from the place of like, oh, I want to participate and give, which is awesome. But we also want to think about how, if you're part of that community, what are ways that you would also be receiving? Because it's about giving and receiving, right? Any ideas?
Well, one idea that I had was just like kind of a congregation-based buy nothing Skillshare group, so that there is a place to do that, whether that's, creating a Signal group or using a Discord, or maybe it's like a bulletin board. It could be anywhere along the lines of technology that we want to use, but someplace where folks can put up, what they need, uh, or what they would like, and also share that gratitude or share those gifts. Like I mentioned, I have a background as a somebody who worked on a crisis line, but I know how to hold space for folks that are going through a tough time. And so even just offering that up, like if you need somebody to call, like let's set up a call and I'll just listen
Yeah.
and hold that space.
Yeah.
But other folks too, just being able, sometimes that is a gift to ourselves too, of being able to use a skill set that we may or may not
Yeah.
see as fitting in. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking at the time and seeing that it's time to wrap up. My last piece, which if I had managed time differently, I would have also, um, I, I guess what I would like to say is as an exit, and you can pass if you prefer, but if you want to share just a sentence or two about how you can see mutual aid connecting to your spiritual practice or spiritual growth. Like what, if there's anything to be said about that.
I could start. I mean, for me, I think this is a shift of how we live, and it's a way of living in community and in connection and in relationship.
Mm.
And that's what I long for. So,
yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
For me, it
part of
feels
my
very
spirit.
inclusive.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Sorry, go ahead, Shelley.
I was just saying it feels inclusive. Sometimes it feels uncomfortable always to be on the receiving end
Mhm.
or having to reach out, but this feels mutual.
But for me, it's part of my spiritual growth arc has been about focusing on the good things in life, the flower instead of the crack or whatever, or the beauty of the crack. And this is, I think, part of that, focusing on the help and the aid and the support instead of the things that are wrong.
Mm.
And finding ways to do that within spiritual community is just perfect.
I have found this particular session that you have offered today, Dallas, to be, it feels good in my gut.
Mm.
And right now, that's exceedingly important because I've had a few setbacks lately. And this time with you all has been fulfilling in a way that is very real. I feel my heart filling back up with the direction I want to go. So thank you all very much.
Oh, I'm so glad, Kathy. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciate the concept and having just a greater understanding, distinguishing between really what is charity and what is mutual aid. And so for me spiritually, it's looking at, direct support to humankind, which is, I think, so important.
Yeah.
Or mutual support.
Yeah.
It goes
Yeah.
both ways.
It does. It goes both ways. For me, I think it's a practical expression of that aspiration that we have, or that intention that we have when we come together to give, receive, and grow. When we hear that giving, receiving, and growing, I think, yes, this is a way we can do that. So thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. I hope, may our time together give us some nourishment, inspiration, and a sense of belonging, sense of communalism. I don't want to say community, but like, you're not alone. We are not alone. May it all support us as we dream and experiment with ways that we can support one another in making the world the way it needs to be. Extinguish your chalice. Thank you so much to all of you for being here. I'm betting that we'll send a link out if you need to access this again. Don't forget to check out Moose Jaw online. Make sure that you know what's coming up, because we've got a bunch of cool stuff. And if you need the link to Dean Spade's Mutual Aid YouTube, go grab it from the chat. Thank you so much, everyone. And then my email, in case you need that, dallas@moosejaw.org. You can always reach me that way too. We're so glad you were here. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
you.
Thank you.